In my opinion, anorexia and bulimia are not psychiatric diseases or disorders. It's a biological condition. To understand anorexia and bulimia, we need to review our understanding of stress. So stress of all kinds begins with sensory inputs that trigger the stress pathways, and then the body releases stress handling molecules, and then there are responses. The first and the main stress handling molecule or stress responding molecule is a hormone called CRH. Now this hormone acts on two different receptors. There are different genes, there are different receptors. So CRH1 and CRH2. People know that CRH1 is a path that leads to cortisol and to the recruitment of blood glucose to give the body more energy to counter the stress situation. People think that CRH2, the other receptor, does the opposite thing kind of. It somehow diminishes stress. Now when I looked at the data, I concluded that this is not the case, that stress should actually be divided into two different types of stress. One is stress that involves a deficiency of something, of energy, of heat, of oxygen. And the other is stress that involves an excess of something. So if you have too much sugar, or too much oxygen, or too much heat. And my theory here with respect to CRH and stress is that CRH2, its physiological role is to handle this second situation where you have an excess of something. So we have two different types of stress. CRH triggers them both, but then it acts on different receptors in these different situations. So my theory of anorexia is really very simple. The body's response to excess of food, of glucose, contains many different responses. One of them is to reduce food intake, to make it easier for you to eat less. This is one of the effects of CRH2. And in rodents, in mice and rats, it is well known. This is one of the main things that it does. So my thinking was, what if in anorexia the main problem is that you have stress that activates this CRH2 receptor, and then it's biologically people feel that they don't want to eat. Now, there is a concept called the affinity of a receptor, which means how much of the molecule that activates it is needed in order to activate it. So CRH1 is activated immediately. You don't need a lot of CRH in order to activate it. But CRH2 is activated with more. So my thinking was that, okay, you have a little bit of stress, it activates your CRH1, but then you have a lot of stress, it's because it's excessive stress, it activates your CRH2, and then you don't feel like eating. Moreover, and this is something that I had to do more searches in order to find out. When CRH2 starts activating, it recruits serotonin to help it with its actions, especially in the gut. And what serotonin does in the gut in this situation is, again, diminishes your desire to eat by introducing nausea and even a will of vomiting if it's extreme. So you have a biological path whereby you don't feel like eating, and you feel that you sometimes want to vomit and that you are nauseous. These are the three main biological properties of anorexia. It's not a psychiatric disease, it's a biological condition.
Is it far more common in women than men?
Yes.
Why?
Women have much more CRH than men because CRH is highly active and is essential during birth. So they have more of it. One thing that we also need to understand is that in the normal course of affairs, stress comes and goes. If you are a healthy person, you can overcome it. But the stress paths and molecules are so many that there can be very many epigenetic and genetic changes that will tend to make it chronic for you. So this path will be chronically activated. So many patients will suffer from anorexia all their lives. And many would not, by the way. So anorexia is known to be triggered by a stressful life event. And then you get over it, and then you're okay. Bulimia is kind of the same thing, but it's with CRH1 instead of CRH2. So CRH1, when it is activated all the time, it gives you an unceasing feeling of wanting to eat. And this is what causes the binge eating episodes in bulimia, and this is basically bulimia. It's interesting to know that more than half of anorexia patients also express some binge eating episodes. So it seems like the concentrations of CRH just go up and down, and when they go up, it's anorexia, and when they go down, they experience bulimia.
Let's talk about suggestions for treatments.
Okay, so if you can reduce the synthesis of CRH, that would be perfect because that's what causes the problem. It is possible to do it. Nobody has done it yet. Because pharmaceutical companies usually work at the level of the receptor and not of the molecule that attaches to the receptor, because it's easier. But I think it's doable and possible to diminish the synthesis of CRH and thereby to solve the problem.
I'm trying to understand in my mechanistic eye, is there a warehouse of CRH, or every CRH produced is immediately sent to some CRH receptors?
There is a warehouse. It's called a CRH producing cell. And when the sensory inputs sense some kind of a stress situation, they recruit this cell and it starts producing CRH and sending it everywhere. That's what we want to diminish in order to treat the disease. So one treatment would be to reduce CRH synthesis. Another one for anorexia would be to inhibit the CRH2 receptor, but then there is a risk of bulimia because all remaining CRH will attach itself to the CRH1 receptor. So this is not a good approach. Another approach is to somehow decrease the release of all hormones that are related. So there is a hormone called somatostatin whose role is to diminish the release of many other hormones. There are drugs that are based on it. We can use it on patients. We can also use serotonin-based drugs against vomiting. Psychiatrists say that anorexia patients deliberately try to vomit in order to reduce their body weight. What I'm saying is that they vomit because this is the biological signal that their body gives them. So what I'm saying is that simple biological drugs against nausea and vomiting might help.
Let's say you had the choice of picking a researcher anywhere in the world and giving him the task of substantiating your theory or bringing us closer to finding a cure? Which would be the next activity you would suggest?
Well, so the theory needs to be substantiated more, so we can measure the levels of CRH and of the activation of CRH1 and CRH2 in the brain. We can measure the levels of serotonin in the gut and its activation. There are many things, many theory predictions that my theory implies here.